Hello there and welcome to another Coffee with Colin, and thank you very much for joining me. This week I'm coming to you from the middle of Storm Emma. It's about 10 inches of snow outside the studio here because Ireland has been just blanketed, and in fact Ireland is in lockdown for the last number of days. In fact, every county experiencing a status red weather warning and effectively locking it down. And I had a particular topic I wanted to cover off in this week's Coffee with Colin, but it will wait till next week because Storm Emma has reminded me of a particular storm, a perfect storm of events that killed our first business. I'd like to tell you that story, if I may, prompted of course by Storm Emma. 20 years ago in 1998 we relocated from Dublin to Limerick, and we did so for opportunity. Prior to that I was general manager of Bewley's of Grafton Street, and then I was the franchise manager for the Bewley's Cafe brand, and so I saw opportunity and indeed lifestyle outside the pale, and we decided that we would in fact relocate, come to Limerick and see what we could do working for ourselves. So we took on the Bewley's Cafe franchise in Cruiser Street. And it worked really well for a while. For a short period of time, the economy in Ireland was booming, Limerick itself was booming, everything was coming together, the Celtic Tiger was beginning to roar, and money was being made. And our cafe in Cruiser Street, because of a whole confluence of good stuff, our cafe in Cruiser Street in Limerick began to thrive. So 1998 was a good year, 1999 was a good year, 2000 started as a good year, and then things began to go wrong. And then a perfect storm began to form on the horizon. We didn't notice it at first, but a perfect storm began to form, and when it was full blown it effectively killed our business. I'd like to tell you that story if I may. And the first element in our perfect storm was hardly noticeable. And what it was changing customer eating habits. Bewley's had been around since 1840. Yes, that is 1840. And has been renowned here in Ireland for many years for great coffee, great breakfast, real brown bread, real butter, etc. Sticky buns. And we had a Bewley's Cafe franchise, so that was the fare that we offered. But around the turn of the century, the millennials, the new generation, wanted new stuff. They wanted wraps and paninis and lattes and cappuccinos, and Bewley's wasn't renowned for that fare. So all of a sudden there was a slight but almost imperceptible but a definite decline in our sales. We could see that people were voting with their feet and going elsewhere. So for the first few years our business in Limerick had been growing steadily, and around the turn of the century, because of changing customer eating habits, there was a slight change and a slight dip and a slight downward trajectory, but it wasn't something that we were overly concerned about. The second element in our perfect storm, however, was foot and mouth disease. And in 2001, foot and mouth disease hit the island of Ireland, came in through the UK, came in through Northern Ireland and down into the south, and effectively it shut down the economy because the government, in an attempt to try and curtail the disease, asked the people in the hinterlands not to come into the cities. And of course Limerick here in the Midwest is surrounded by agricultural land, so effectively our marketplace decided, and were asked to stay at home. And the effect that had on us in Cruiser Street in Limerick was they didn't come back into the city, so our business literally dropped 20% overnight. And this went on for about 6 months. Foot and mouth disease was trying to be contained here in Ireland. So for about 6 months from March of 2001, our business stayed flat at about 20% lower than we would have expected at that time. And that was a problem for us. So now we had two elements. We had slightly declining sales because of changing customer eating habits, followed by a 20% reduction overnight because of foot and mouth disease, and our business stayed flat. And we were hoping that we'd get a bounce when the Americans came back in, because here in the Midwest, Shannon International Airport serves the whole area, and of course we benefited for many years from transatlantic traffic. But what happened in 2001, in September 2001, 9/11. Nobody saw that coming. And when 9/11 happened, the Americans understandably stopped flying. And when they stopped flying back into Shannon. And when they stopped flying back into Shannon, the whole region suffered. So our business had been growing steadily, began a slow decline around the turn of the century, dropped 20% overnight because of foot and mouth disease, and then stayed flat. We didn't get the expected bounce, stayed flat because the Americans never flew back. So that was a problem for us. This was an elongated period where we were suffering from low sales. The fourth and final element in our perfect storm, the one that effectively killed us, was, in fact, the Celtic Tiger itself. The Celtic Tiger, for those of you that will remember, was this period of madness here in Ireland where the paper value, not the real value, the paper value of properties was rising day by day by day by day. And people were literally becoming millionaires, paper millionaires, because the value of their home that was valued at X one day was valued at X plus 50 grand the next day, X plus 50 grand again the next day. 250 grand became 300 grand, became 350, became 400 grand. within a very short space of time. Ridiculous stuff. But of course, that madness spilled over into all aspects of property here in Ireland, including the property that we were renting for our cafe in Cruiser Street. So in 2002, our landlord sought and was granted at arbitration a ridiculous rent of €1,000 per day. Yeah, per day. €1,000 per day, just for the privilege of us opening our doors in our cafe in Cruiser Street. So a coffee shop in the middle of Limerick City, Ireland's third city, in the height of the Celtic Tiger madness, was valued apparently at a rent of €1,000 per day. So every morning when we woke up from that moment on, we had to find another €1,000 just for the privilege of turning the key in the door, to open the door to go in and trade. That was before we started buying product, before we started paying for light and heat, before we started employing staff. €1,000 per day. €313,000 rent roll from 2002 on. And on top of that, another 48,000, I think it was, in rates and service charges. So effectively that was €1,000 per day, every day. And so our business couldn't survive that, and we knew our business couldn't survive that. So look at what happened. We had a thriving business around the turn of the century, a slight dip and a slight downward trajectory because people wanted different fare than Bewley's was currently offering. Bewley's as a brand tried to make it right and tried to become credible in that marketplace, but effectively we ran out of time. And the reason we ran out of time was because of the other three elements in the storm. The second element was foot and mouth disease. Business dropped 20% overnight. The third element was 9/11, where our business that had dropped 20% was just coming out of the foot and mouth disease epidemic, and all of a sudden 9/11 struck and our business remained flat. And that brought us into 2002, when our landlord sought and was granted a rent of €1,000 per day. And that was it. Game over. We had to reinvent quickly, and effectively it killed our business. Am I happy that a perfect storm of events killed our business? I wasn't at the time. But yes, truthfully, I'm happy now, because if it hadn't killed that business, I'd probably be running around a cafe today instead of talking to you. The killing of our first business led us on a particular journey, quite an amazing journey that has happened since. One of the phrases I use is, sometimes I win and sometimes I learn. And of course, we clearly weren't winning during that period. But there were lots of lessons, and two of the most interesting and important lessons that I took from that period include, number one, we have to keep reinventing. We have to get out there all the time and continually look for opportunities, because we have no idea what's coming down the track. And the failure of the cafe effectively put me on this path of going out seeking opportunities. It was as a result of me seeking opportunities, because I knew the cafe was failing, that I met the man in the train. The man in the train led me to a meeting which allowed me win the first contract for our school lunch business, and we supplied 27 lunches on day one almost 15 years ago. And on Monday, when we go back to school, all going well, if the snow melts, we will supply 32,500 lunches on one day alone. 32,500 lunches all over the island of Ireland as a result of me meeting the man in the train, as a result of the perfect storm killing our first business. The second lesson I learned during that period, which is probably the most important lesson I learned, was that, and is that, failure is not the end of the world. Failure is not the end of the world. Our business failed, we didn't. I'll say that again. Our business failed, we didn't. Now, it took us a long while to get our heads around that in fact our business had failed and we hadn't. And the only thing we knew that we could do was get back up, dust ourselves off and go again. And so that's what we did. We simply got up and dusted ourselves off. It wasn't easy. We got up and dusted ourselves off, went out looking for more opportunity, met the man on the train, and the rest, as they say, is history. And thank you for joining me for this week's Coffee with Colin from the middle of Storm Emma. If you've enjoyed it and you think somebody else would benefit, I'd be delighted if you'd pass the link on. If it's your first time here and you've enjoyed it and you'd like more of this type of stuff, pop to the homepage, ColinO'BrienMotivation.com, leave me some details and I'll make sure you get a link like this every week. Most importantly, please consider what's been shared here today and apply it into your thinking for this next week. And then equally as importantly, please come back next week and let's share another coffee together and I'll ruminate on some other aspect of life and business. In fact, I've got a very good one already in the bag for you that I was going to put out this week, but it'll have to wait till next week because of Storm Emma. So, meantime, get some good coffee if you can, get some R&R, get some fresh air. Go out and make some snowmen. It's not going to last. And if you spend a lot of time alone during the week, please go meet some people this weekend and spend some time with others. If you spend a lot of time with people during the week, well then I recommend you take a little bit of time alone this weekend and get to know yourself a little. And then when the time is right, and only when the time is right, get your head back in the game, get organised for the week ahead, ahead, get stuck in and make next week count, and I'll see you here this time next week. Sláinte. I love great coffee. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.